Hello and good morning and welcome into Big Talk. We bring you college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I am Sam Sprunger in the host chair, so to speak, for Dalton Shetler, who is traveling this morning or traveled late last night. I'm not really sure which one to call it. But then I am also joined, though, by Tony, who is filling in for me on the other side of the screen. Tony, welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, I say Dalton travels out. I travel back from my week in extremely hot Vegas. While everybody here in the Midwest got to enjoy a little bit of cool, crisp fall weather, I got to enjoy a very nice, toasty 100 plus degrees, even at 11:30 at night in the desert. I was like, and then I come back this week and it's all 90s. I'm like, no.
You
I
brought
want
it
the fall
with you.
weather. I want the fall weather back.
You brought it with you. Way to go.
I know.
Weather travels west, sir.
I know, apparently.
Or
east with us.
Travels east from the west. Sorry, that's what I meant, was from the west.
Gotcha.
So a lot happening in the college sports world. We've got, the next time we come on the air, we will have had a college football game played in the Big Ten. I'm pretty excited about that. That'll be happening. So we're within days of the season starting. We've gotten some coaching news, I guess. Some conference expansion rumblings. What's new? It's been since, last year when USC and UCLA decided to jump. We've been talking about expansion ever since. So it's a process. And plus, Tony and I are going to talk about who we're picking to win each of the divisions in the last year of the divisions for the Big Ten Conference before 4 new teams join next year, being USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon. Those strong Midwest teams that everybody's come to grow and love. So let's start with the coaching news. News just in the past couple of days came out that University of Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh has accepted through the university, through a self-imposed suspension, a 3-game suspension. And Tony, you and I talked about what the 4-game suspension would have been. It's not going to be a suspension that is costly in the aspect of they're playing opponents that a coaching decision could or should make a difference. It's Eastern Carolina, Bowling Green, and UNLV are the 3 games that he's not going to be coaching. He originally agreed with the NCAA, and then the NCAA reneged on it, was a 4-game suspension, which also included the Big Ten opener against Rutgers. Tony, is this enough to keep the NCAA from imposing any further penalty on Coach Harbaugh by the time they get around to it? And what he's being suspended for is conduct during the COVID no contact period, recruiting period. There were some things that he had done, including, and we'll get to it, but including getting a cheeseburger for a young man, but then not necessarily giving the full information to the NCAA. Is this enough to keep the NCAA from dropping the hammer even more?
Oh, no. I think they'll still do it, mainly because, and we talked about this in previous shows,
because they don't know what in the world they're talking about.
They don't know what they're talking about. and everybody realizes it, and they do. They're realizing they don't have as much power as the position that they hold
as they used to.
They do. They don't have the power, so they're going to. And I would be willing. Exactly. They think they do. So honestly, what I think is going to happen, and I'm going to throw a little bit of a hot take in here.
Ooh.
If Jim Harbaugh is with Michigan next year, because honestly, I think this could be Jim Harbaugh's last year with Michigan.
Not the last 3 were.
Yeah, we say that and watch this time, hearing about
we'll retire before he does.
Right. I think if he stays, they will still try to implement some type of a punishment. And I believe at that point, Michigan will basically come back. It's not as serious as to try to say it's a double jeopardy because he's being punished for the same crime twice because it's self-imposed. They have to do it. But I believe that's going to be something that Michigan tries to throw out there as well. We already, quote unquote, punished him for doing it. So, why is he getting an additional punishment on top of it?
Well, and the whole reason Michigan's even doing it is in hopes that it will be enough.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that, well, at least we're punishing him. We're making him sit out. Whether or not he's making his paycheck, I'm sure it's without pay. He's not hurting for it. Walmart khakis aren't that expensive, so he's fine.
He's got 7 pairs for every day of the week.
That's right. And every 3 months he might replace all 7 pairs, or whatever. But my point is he's not going to miss out on a lot. He wasn't going to miss out on a lot on what the NCAA, and this is what is confusing to me, is the NCAA themselves negotiated with Michigan and came to that 4-game suspension. And then the infractions committee said, nope, we're not going to, or the punishment committee, whatever committee for the NCAA said, no, we're not going to agree to that. Why? Why was that not enough when your own entity, that right there to me says they don't have the power that they seem to think they do when it comes to doling out punishments, and they're so backwards. I brought this up with Dalton. Tennessee had hundreds of infractions, and it wasn't that they misled them; they just didn't say anything.
Yeah,
like it was, and somebody found out about it, and it became that to me. Not that so he violated some things, and I get that there needs to be something put in place, but you know what? Unless you're going to drop the hammer on Tennessee, you cannot do that to Michigan. I'm sorry, you can't. And I am not a Michigan fan.
Well, not only that, to me, this is what kind of really makes me, think and wonder what some of their thought processes are behind this, because this happened during COVID when Michigan didn't have really a season at all. This happened, and
I think they played 5 games that year.
Yeah, and I don't remember what time or if they even disclosed a time of when this was done, but nonetheless, this was basically at the heart of COVID when it was first happening. Why are you just now, 3 years post that fact, coming out and saying, you know what, we need to punish you for it? Like anything and everything that Harbaugh has done to that point, whether it's right, wrong, indifferent, whatever their opinion, whatever anybody's personal opinion is already long done. Like the gentleman that he, whether the gentleman agreed to become with Michigan or not, he's a junior at this point. Like, what more are you going to do?
Or if he had 1 year of prep school, he might be in the NFL by now.
Right. Like there's like anything that could have, happened or, gone because of this, it's already over with. Like I get, there maybe needs to be some type of punishment if he truly did something wrong, but I don't understand this, several year delay. And oh man, Tennessee did this like 6 years ago. We got to punish them now for it. What is holding you like that? That's what is baffling me is what is your process for when you first hear about it? Is there a statute of limitations on it? Because if that's the case, and then obviously, we've probably brought it up on the show. Other people bring it up all the time with Reggie Bush and the whole Heisman situation. When are they going to say, okay, now that it's okay, we'll give Reggie his Heisman back, whatever. Like this, and we've talked about it. The biggest issue with them, having the power they think they do, is the inconsistencies and there's no set standard. They just make the rules up as they go, and it's a case by case basis. No, you need some type of set guideline.
And then make it a case by case,
and then make it a more severe. And honestly, they could even say, okay, hey, this is what we're looking at initially because this is what we're seeing. We'll do an investigation, and like you said, we'll do case by case. Maybe it's more severe than that. Maybe it's not. But again, we as fans, we just want consistency, and I would be willing to bet a lot of these schools and programs just want consistency.
For sure. And we both, I mean, the NCAA ruling, or I guess it'd be the NFL probably, is you have to be 3 years out of high school in order to be eligible for the NFL draft.
Yep.
Maurice Clarett tried it, failed, had to sit out a year before he got drafted by the Broncos. So why can't that be the statute of limitations? You can't punish the actual school unless it shows that they improperly benefited from their actions. And I'm talking major. I mean, what did Reggie Bush, what did USC do with Reggie Bush that made it so heinous that they had to take his Heisman and then they had to vacate all those wins?
Right.
I don't even remember. So obviously it wasn't that big of a deal. I can tell you, I remember, I was really young, but I can remember when SMU got the death penalty, for crying out loud. That was before you existed, Tony. So therefore, that means it was kind of a major deal.
Yeah,
I can remember that.
Say LSU just had the same thing with a player. I can't remember if it was grades or it was some type of. It was a very small infraction that happened back in 2007. They vacated Les Miles' national championship and all of those wins because of that. And it's like, wait a minute, you're doing this 15, 16 years after the fact.
And
almost
I'm sorry,
over a decade.
I'm sorry. Nobody's going to remember that happened.
No.
There are going to be more people that remember they won the national title.
Yeah, and you know, as fans and those players, all of that, you can't take that away because at the end of the day, they still won it.
And here's the thing. They don't award the national championship to anybody.
No.
Because what they say is, well, they had to vacate all those wins. They wouldn't even been there. Another team would have played that game instead. So we can't give it to anybody, which is why Michigan didn't get the national title when Louisville had to vacate their national championship with Pitino.
Yep.
They had to vacate it. They had to vacate all the wins from that year. So therefore, if it was played out to where Louisville lost all those games, they wouldn't have been in the national championship game and it would have been somebody else.
Yep.
So you know what? If you can't prove it while that person's in school, do your jobs, do your investigations. And I'm sorry, people don't get more loose-lipped after those people have left. It's just there's no investigation for it.
Yeah.
Then somebody gets fired and loses a job, and then they open their mouths.
Because they're mad.
Because they're mad at the school that just let them go or did them wrong, whatever. Most of these things that are found, and I'm not saying that it's right.
Right.
I'm just saying, if you're not doing your job to where an infractions committee is finding infractions from schools while those students or the subject of the investigation is still there, then it shouldn't be an investigation. Unless it's so severe, like the prostitution thing at Louisville as well.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty important.
That's pretty,
yeah. That's pretty detrimental to human beings rather than just, oh, we won some games with some guys that got, improper benefits. And I'm using those air quotes very liberally because who's to tell what's an improper benefit? In the world of NIL, how in the world are we able to decide what's an improper benefit?
Yeah,
how do we know?
I was getting ready to ask you, when you said improper benefit, it's like, okay, what's your definition of that? And that's not, disagreeing with you or trying to argue with you. Like,
no.
It's just, that is such a gray area definition because, okay, you may have gotten this kid to side. All the evaluations, everything like that, how many times have you seen it from college to the NFL? Oh, man, Tim Tebow, perfect example. Great college quarterback. How did he do in the NFL? Trash. And you could very easily have the same thing from high school. Man, this kid was an all-around, all-star athlete in high school. Comes to college, can't cut it. They're like, what's the improper benefit?
The one that jumps out to me on that one, and I'll tell you why. It's Ron Paulus. Do you remember that name? He was a quarterback at Notre Dame. Okay. And the reason why that name jumps out to me when you say a kid can be the best in high school and come to college and fizzle out, just like they could do it from college to the pros. He was touted as potentially could be the first 3-time Heisman winner. I don't know about you, but I think he's still waiting on number one, and he retired from football a while ago.
Yeah.
So like, and his college career wasn't horrid, but it wasn't this standout. He was in competition for the Heisman. It was nothing to what he was touted as. So that's something that definitely can happen when it comes to, missing the mark. It's like drafting players in the NFL or baseball or NBA, whatever you want to say. You can miss the mark. But in the world of NIL anymore, who's to say? Who's to say? And why in the world are we still talking about why Michigan is getting a raw deal? Because I agree with you. The whole question was, is this going to be enough? I don't think it's going to be.
No.
I don't think it's going to be. They want to set an example. Michigan's a big name. Tennessee's not that small of a name, but Michigan's hot now. Tennessee hasn't been bad, but
they've been down for the last 10-ish years, with the exception of last year.
But pretty much for the whole time, well, especially during the time that Tennessee was doing this, Michigan still had their high-profile coach, the same coach that's being investigated now, and he's been highly touted the whole entire time that he has been at Michigan. So now he's coming out and getting caught for not necessarily lying, but not telling the entire truth, and they're going to drop the hammer on him. And I think that it just shows even more that the NCAA is hypocritical as all get out in what they're doing in their investigation, their punishment, all of this, because it's not just a cheeseburger, as some, I don't even know what NCAA official said that, but how dare you? It's not just that, but it is one of the reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't say it's not the reason. You said that's not just the reason. So therefore, that means it's one reason. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating because, come on. Let's think, kids. Let's be fair across the board.
And you know what's also sad, and to me, honestly, if I ever had a chance, or if they ever heard this, I would love to say it to them face to face. At what point are you so bad at your job that you start nitpicking things that don't matter? You have how many issues with college football right now? Conference realignments, major schools being out as far as getting potential money deals. The conference is leaving, schools leaving to garner more money to potentially hurt student athletes. The college football playoffs, all of these different things that are quote unquote destroying college football. And your priority is a dude that didn't tell you the truth, but didn't exactly lie to you, fed a potential recruit at the University of Michigan, and you said, you know what? That is at the absolute top of our list of what we need to fix and what's wrong with college football.
And I'm going to go on the record right now. What in the world are we doing, NCAA? Here's what you need to make sure you do. Anybody of any authority that has any issue with this right here, come on, talk to us. Yeah. Because you know what? I welcome it. Because if you can explain it to me and make me understand it, then maybe I'll change my stance. But I think this is so two-faced, so indicative of what the NCAA is doing now and what power, I'll use those in air quotes, NCAA, you have power. Mm-hmm. Come on and talk to us. Tell us why we're wrong, because you know what? I'm doing the math and it just isn't adding up right. It just is not adding up right. And I have no reason, except for when you guys open your mouth for statements, to think anything different. And the only time that you open your mouth, you just make me believe it even more.
Because it's another one of those too. We could sit here, we can criticize how to do a leadership style, how I would do something, how you would do something if we were in the different situations. At least show that you're trying. Like if you came out, especially when all the NIL initial issues started coming out, and you come out and say, hey, this is not perfect. We are going to be working with X, Y, and Z people to try to make this potentially right. It may take us a lot longer than expected, but we are going to work on it. that's giving people something. That's giving people the idea, okay, they're not going to be quick about it. They're going to do their due justice. They're going to take their time. You're taking your time over a damn cheeseburger. That's what you're taking your time on.
Yep.
Like, and like you said, I would love for them to explain, because
somebody in authority. I don't want
somebody in authority,
some
yes, somebody
pencil
in authority.
pusher that they say, "Hey, go talk to these jokers." No, have some intestinal fortitude and come on and talk to us, because I don't get it.
Yeah, like where?
And no offense to the pencil pushers, you play an important role, I guess. I don't know, but they're probably more important than the ones in authority, because every time they open their mouths, I don't believe a word that's coming out of it. But you come on, you come talk to us and tell us why, because I'm not getting it.
And honestly, I would love to just pick their brains of how do they prioritize their list of what's their most top concerning issue, what's their least most concerning issue that they need to really focus on and deal with.
And Tony, I am not a Michigan fan, but yet I'm defending them.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I'll say I don't know if we're necessarily defending Michigan as we're just criticizing the
correct,
NCAA's
but in the vacancy of supporting the NCAA, we're supporting Michigan in this argument. You have to admit it. I'm not saying you got to like it. I just say you have to admit that in this situation, we are of support in the aspect that we think that the NCAA is wrong in how they're handling the Michigan situation. And that should say something. I am a fan. So therefore, I pick teams I don't like. I openly don't like Michigan. But in this situation, I can't take the other side. I can't.
Yeah.
So, moving on. We've talked enough on that one, and I think our timer's a little off, but I think it jumped a little bit at the beginning. Don't know why, but no, technology. Moving along, there are some reports coming out that the ACC, about a week and a half after saying they weren't going to invite Cal and Stanford to join the conference, there are rumors that they're meeting again, and have in the past couple of days, to talk yet again about adding the Cardinal and the Bears into the ACC. So from the PAC conference to the ACC. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of travel in the 4 teams that are coming from the PAC to the Big Ten. But you're talking about PAC, Pacific Athletic Conference, to the ACC, the Atlantic Coastal Conference.
Coast to coast.
Yeah, they're going coast to coast, baby, with nothing in the middle. But okay, 2 things I want to ask. One, do you find any validity about how serious this is going to be?
Yeah.
2, is it going to matter, because are there going to be teams that are still going to jump ship? Are they going to get the grant of rights thrown out, the ACC, and get the ability to leave the conference without the hefty penalties that are in place currently?
So I do think there is validity to this, and I'm going to say a big fish name is I would say, sole driver behind this reason. That would be our lovely little big fish here in our own backyard of the Big Ten by the name of Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
Because Notre Dame does not want the Big Ten to get, at minimum, Stanford. Because if they get Stanford,
they know they're going to the Big Ten if that happens.
Exactly.
They know that Notre Dame. They know that they themselves will end up in the Big Ten.
So to me, Notre Dame, I believe, is pushing this more, because I do think Notre Dame is starting to realize we probably need to get into a conference, like probably pretty soon. We still don't want to get into the Big Ten, because they're still.
Man, if there was somebody on this show that said that they're going to have to join a conference.
No, there's a couple of us have said that.
But I still think it's the Big Ten.
I think they should. Because, to answer your second question, I still think there are going to be people that are going to leave the ACC. And I say that because you look at Florida State, you look at Clemson, North Carolina, and I believe Virginia was the other big fish.
Miami for football.
Well, Miami, not necessarily big fish as far as like brand, but like making noise as far as wanting out of the ACC.
Well, I'm thinking. I thought I saw a report that one of the six that agreed that they would sign to nullify the grant of rights. Miami, Virginia, North Carolina,
Florida
Clemson,
State.
Florida State, and I can't for some reason remember the sixth team that said that they would sign it, but they still need 2 more teams to do that.
Yeah, but I think
majority plus 1.
Right. I still think they will, though, even if they are able to get Stanford and Cal in. I think they still do it because, Florida State, Clemson, all of them, they're looking at what the SEC is earning. They're like, we want that. And I think they also realize, too, especially after this whole, PAC deal fell through, they're like, we're not going to be able to renegotiate as a conference to get more of this money. So we're going to have to jump ship if we want this type of money. And we're going to have to either jump ship to the Big Ten or we're going to have to jump ship to the SEC in order to get it. So I think that there's validity in them in Notre Dame trying to push for it to happen. So that way, they can go in the ACC. They don't have to go to the Big Ten. But I don't see the ACC lasting very long because I see the major powerhouses saying, no, we want more money. They're probably not going to give us more money. We want to be able to leave to go get it.
I honestly think that this is a little bit more smoke than there is fire, just because the ACC knows they have to have a majority plus 1 to nullify the grant of rights. If you add 2 more schools in, that's 2 more schools that are going to be like, oh, no, we're glad to be in a conference.
Yes.
So we're not going to nullify that. And they probably won't get an opportunity to anyways, but unless they can drag their feet, the conference can drag their feet just long enough to give them full member benefits to where, oh, yeah, now they do matter. And the Cardinal and Bears ain't going to sign nothing to nullify the grant of rights that they have because they're just thrilled to death, especially Cal, thrilled to death that they have a conference to be in. And a major conference to be in.
Still be considered a Power 5. The other crazy thing that has been, and I want to throw it in there because it's still rumored, there's no guarantees that it would happen. Obviously, Stanford and Cal are the 2, quote-unquote, big fish left of the pack that people are semi-interested in as far as Power 5 conferences. There's talks SMU might be involved as a potential third team to join in with the ACC, but I've seen a lot of things, and I don't know why SMU would do this. They would come in for 7 years and not get any type of immediate deal. That basically they wouldn't get paid. I'm like, why? Like, if I'm SMU, I get it, you want to join a Power 5 conference, but why would you leave any type of money, extra money, just sitting out there?
Especially in the world of NIL. You can use that money, A, to fund other sports, B, filter, and that's happening, filter into collectives to where they can get players that they want. That's going to happen, and it probably already is, I'm sure. I know it's not allowed, but yeah, we know, especially SMU, for crying out loud, always plays by the rules. So I mean, it's that's a callback to what we were talking about a little bit ago. But the whole point on that is why in the world would they join a conference? Leave a conference that they're getting paid. It doesn't matter how much they're getting paid to go to a conference to have a patch that says ACC and that's it.
Yeah, to be considered.
That's all they're getting.
A Power 5 school.
And get it handed to them year in and year out against Clemson, Florida State, Miami, UNC, all these teams. You're telling me that? No. And I guess maybe that was what kind of triggered me to think this is maybe a little bit more smoke than fire. Was I think the ACC's worried they're next.
Yes.
So they've got to cut it off at the pass before they're next. So they're trying to add teams to make it look like they're fine, and it will help them in their grant of rights. Hey, we're not going to give you any money, SMU, but you damn well better not sign a grant to nullify grant of rights. Mm-hmm. Because that can happen in the next couple of years. I mean, it's a long media deal. They can do it.
Yep.
So, it's I still think I think Cal is in big trouble because they have a mortgage on that new stadium that the San Andreas fault runs through like for the next 80 years.
Yeah.
And in the 2030s, they start paying like $40 million a year, if not more, for like 80 years. I'm not joking about that total either.
No, I believe you.
And they're in trouble, I think, because I still think that the Big Ten's not done. And I think their next big target, which will get them to, is Stanford. They've already shown they don't have any problem rating the Pac conference. No issue whatsoever. So they're going to try to get Stanford. That will give them the Northern California market for the conference. They've already got a stranglehold on the southern part of the state. They'll have the northern part of the state. And Notre Dame just lost their last huge rival that exists outside of the ACC. And by the way, don't know how valid those rumors are. I've even seen rumors enough to say that Florida State and Clemson are interested in going to the Big Ten as well.
Yes, I've seen that too.
So ACC trying to cut it off at the pass before they're next. And I still think that Stanford is still a target, even though we haven't heard much. We've heard some, but like right after Oregon and Washington left, you kind of heard a little bit about Stanford. First it was ACC, and then it was nope, they're not going to the ACC, and then it was a little bit of the Big Ten kind of is interested. Well, now it's hot and heavy on the ACC.
Yeah.
Still, fact remains, Tony, no matter what kind of new member deal they would have to do to where they don't get a full share, is going to be comparable, if not just as good as what the ACC can offer them. And in a couple of years, you'll be a full member, you get a full share.
Yep. And you'll
Kevin Warren, again, negotiating the expansion clause into that media deal. So as the conference grows, so does the media deal. That's going to keep, conference teams currently just as happy adding new teams. I've also seen somebody was talking about, I wrote an article about it on ASAP, but then I read another article and it kind of ended with, I don't see it happening, but they did mention that in the next couple of years, the Big Ten's going to expand out to 10 conference games. And that's really going to hamstring Notre Dame on how they can schedule competent opponents to be able to contend for the CFP. Mm-hmm. It's not far-fetched.
No. Well, especially now that one of their biggest rivals in USC is now in the Big Ten that they love to face. If the Big Ten
USC loves it.
Yeah, USC loves it.
Because that's a feather in their cap too if they get a win.
Mm-hmm. And it is. It's a big draw because they're both historically great teams that everybody loves to see.
Yep.
I agree with you. I think the Big Ten has already kind of approved Stanford, even though we may not have seen anything. Athletically, at least especially football-wise, they're not great. But academically, they're one of the absolute top schools in the country. And that's one of the things that the Big Ten obviously looks at is not just, football-wise, but academically, where do you stand? They're one of the top institutions in the country by far.
Yeah. So
I definitely think it will happen. And, plus, to kind of add to your point with, because I even heard the rumors of Clemson, FSU, I believe UNC and Virginia as well, those big four ACC teams, also wanted to join the Big Ten because you think about it. You look at how great Clemson has been for the last 10 years. You look at how, they kind of fell off after they won their national championship, but they're potentially supposed to be very good this year with Florida State. Top perennial teams in the ACC are earning almost twice as less as Northwestern.
Yeah.
As Indiana. It's all as Rutgers.
Iowa, who doesn't play offense.
All these teams at the bottom of the Big Ten are making double the amount of money as most of these big perennial schools that aren't already in the Big Ten or the SEC or even the Big 12.
Well, and I know we've covered this, But like, and I've pretty much said about the same thing over and over and over again. But now it's becoming like these reports of them the ACC flirting with you. It doesn't change my impression, because if it was legitimate, think about how quickly Arizona State, Colorado,
Utah.
all left, and Utah left the Pac conference after it was reported that they were negotiating to leave.
Yep.
It was that quick. This was 2 to 3 days ago. I read the report that ACC presidents were meeting about Stanford and Cal.
Again.
We don't have any news, and that was after they voted on it and said no.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're meeting again. A few days later, it's nothing. Crickets chirp chirp chirp. You know.
Now
so I still think it's happening for the Big Ten.
I think so. Now, I do think their only saving grace is they don't necessarily have to get anything done necessarily right now, because at least they're locked in.
Ooh, you're playing with the Pac-12, the Pac conference mantra, huh? Oh, we're fine.
Well, no, I never said that. They're locked in at least till next year, because obviously they have the deadline. If you were going to leave the ACC, you had to report it by like 2 weeks ago, last Thursday.
Something
today,
like
maybe?
that. Yeah, it was something. It's they had a deadline. It is passed, so it will. Yes. But if you just go, well, we're fine.
Oh no, I'm saying they
Pac-12. It wasn't that long ago.
True. I'm saying they at least kind of the same with the Pac of like, oh no, we're fine. We got time. You got a year to get a media
clock's
deal
ticking,
done.
buddy.
A year later, you got.
I
keep
telling myself the new logo has time, but I'm gonna have to. The only reason I haven't come up with something new is because I'm afraid once I do, it's gonna change again.
It's going to.
But yeah, there's been nothing that has changed my mind, and I guess until the report is Stanford and Cal to the ACC, I'm not gonna believe it, because I think it would have happened by now, as quickly as all of the. I mean, shoot, the reports were barely out long enough for Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado to leave. That Oregon and Washington were leaving. Like, it was literally within hours of it happening. Yep. So, like, as quickly as those fell, and don't get me wrong, now it's one of those. It's like, okay, what do we do now? Well, there's still a couple of decent teams. I'm still surprised having, and I get it historically, academically, whatever. I'm surprised Oregon State and Washington State haven't been talked about anywhere other than the Mountain West. It's the only place.
I feel bad for them. Like I said, I think I mentioned it in the show before. I've at least mentioned it on Discord. The fact that supposedly there was a president of one of the Pac schools prior to coming into take everybody except for Oregon State, Washington. I'm like, why? Why? What did y'all do to them?
Yeah, did they forget the beer at the president's party or something, or what?
I don't like.
They lose a bet.
And it's funny though, because they're like, okay, well, Washington, we'll still have the Apple Cup against Washington State every year. Oregon, they'll still have the Civil War against.
That'll be a good kickoff to the season. Who wins the Apple Cup?
Right. I mean, we would get our big rivalry, I guess, to start the season, but that's about it. Yeah. But it is kind of crazy that those just two schools are like, they'll be fine. They can go figure it out.
Whatever.
I know. Part of me is really surprised too that the Big 12 or somebody wasn't like, damn, we got kind of some powerhouse teams now. They're going to beat the snot out of each other. Shouldn't we have like a couple bottom feeders for them to like feast on?
If you're talking about football, that's Kansas.
Yeah. Well, Kansas is about it, but not everybody can face Kansas one year. Well, West Virginia, they kind of get to beat up on
West Virginia's iffy half the time.
Iowa State.
They usually have 1 to 2 really good wins in them a year, and then occasionally they'll put 8 or 9 wins on the board.
Yeah, it's weird. Because I remember watching them was it a couple of years ago? They were doing really good. I'm like, oh, look at the Cyclones. Look at them.
And then
It
they
was so
lost 4 in
good.
a row.
Yep. And it's just game over.
So it'll be interesting to see even further and to be able to speculate even further about what's happening. It's just a circus. I mean, it literally is a circus. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it because it's interesting to see where these teams are going to end up, but it's just a circus. It is. I never thought when Dalton and I started this show that this would be what we were talking about late into year 2.
But just remember, Sam, a cheeseburger is 100 times more important than this.
And a million times more important than hundreds of $100 handshakes.
Don't worry about that. The cheeseburger, man. It's not the cheeseburger. It's the message it comes with.
Is that what it is? Please come to Michigan.
It's like a fortune cookie.
Yeah,
the
please
message
come to
is
Michigan.
inside.
So it says, "Help! I'm being held hostage at a cheeseburger factory."
Is that why they came up with the Hamburglar? It's not to actually steal the hamburgers; it's to steal you away.
That's right. That's right. Well, let's move to a lighter note, I guess would be a better way to say this, I guess. Lighter in the aspect of we're not talking about off the field or court action. We're going to talk about what we're seeing and how we feel the Big Ten divisions are going to play out. And Dalton and I kind of talked about it. We kind of analyzed and previewed. I told him who I kind of thought might win, but I never really said, yes, this is what I'm predicting as my conference or my divisional champions. They're going to be playing in Indianapolis in December. I will tell you, I have one team returning to Indianapolis.
Is it Michigan?
So let's go to the Eastern Division. Okay, so the or would you rather start with the lesser West, or is that going to be more interesting?
West to me is more interesting.
We'll keep them for the second division that we talk about. So the West, defending champion Michigan, ranked number 2 in the AP polls, and behind the 2-time defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs. And a lot of predictions have them finishing first in front of Ohio State, which to me probably you would assume then that means they win, they beat Ohio State. They both probably come in undefeated, like many people think, and a lot of people think Michigan's going to win. And almost everybody that I've seen has Penn State number 3. Do you agree with that lineup of those 3?
I go out on kind of a limb here. I think it will be Michigan versus Ohio State
in the final week. That's part of the schedule, so that will happen.
In the final week,
it will come down to that, is what you're saying?
I think so. I think Ohio State will get tripped up by somebody we probably don't expect. I don't really know who, but I think Ohio State will. I think Michigan will get tripped up by Penn State.
Okay, so you think that they'll both have an L on their schedule or on their record by the time they match up in Ann Arbor?
I think just one. I think anything more than one, it's probably out. And if either one has more than one, I think it'll either be Michigan, Ohio State versus Penn State. I think Penn State is a for sure lock if either one of them struggle with more than one loss.
So you think Penn State's only going to have one loss as well? So you think all 3 of them are going to go into it, but they're going to be eliminated through the process of, well, depending on who wins the Michigan-Ohio State game. If you think Michigan's going to get beat by Penn State's got to hope for Ohio State to beat Michigan.
Yep.
But for Penn State to be able to make it into that, they're going to have to either beat both of them, or have Ohio State lose to somebody and they tie with Michigan, so they get the tiebreaker against Michigan. Yep. So is that okay? So you think Michigan's going to end up with that crown then?
I think so. I think and I know we kind of talked about it before. They're the only Big Ten team that's at least a quote unquote power team in the East right now that has a returning quarterback that knows the system, and two of the top running backs in the country in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards coming back, and a still very stout defense, very stout O-line. Everything on paper and celestially aligned saying that they should be there.
Do you know what cures a quarterback issue?
What's that?
2 of the 3 top receivers in the country. And that's what Ohio State has coming back. True. They have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Buka.
Buka, yeah.
They're 1 and 3 respectively in the last rankings of receivers that I saw. That cures a lot of issues a quarterback might have. But I agree with you to a certain extent. I think we enter that last week with Penn State with 1 loss to Ohio State. I think Michigan has 1 loss to Penn State. And I think Ohio State has a loss, and I think you'll probably laugh me out of the building, but I think it's to Purdue.
It's the spoiler makers. It would not surprise me.
And here's my reasoning to this. Purdue, if there is a team in the East that they have their number, it is Ohio State. Don't have any rhyme nor reason as to why, but they do.
Historically, and every time Ohio State's been like the number 2 team in the country, Purdue's like, hold my beer.
Yep.
Let me fix that.
And so, like last year or 2 years ago, when Ohio State ran them out of the building after a couple of turnovers and it kind of bit Purdue, I think Ohio State was 2 or 3 in the country. It started out as a decent game, and once we hit the third quarter, it was over. Yeah. There were a couple of turnovers, and the lead got to 21, and it just kind of stayed there the rest of the game. Yeah. Hudson Card is better than people think.
He was. I remember watching him at Texas. He actually, for people who maybe don't follow Texas as much.
You're going to say exactly what Dalton said.
Go for it. That game against Alabama, between he and Quinn Ewers both, I mean, you think about it, Alabama only won by 1 point. They won by literally a field goal with 10 seconds left. Like,
Alabama fans were worried out of their mind because Hudson Card actually played pretty well, and they weren't expecting it. They thought, Texas lost their quarterback. We're going to cruise. And Card held his own, actually performed pretty well. Now, he didn't get a lot of chances. Plus, with Manning coming to Austin, there wasn't any room for him. No. Ryan Walters put Card at the top of his list as the quarterback he wanted, and he went out and he got him. Yep. I think there's a reason for that. It fits the program and his schemes that he felt that they were going to run. He felt that the Card was going to be the guy that would be able to fill as well as possible Aiden O'Connell's shoes as he left. Purdue still got some good talent over there, so I think they are potentially able to beat Ohio State. I don't think they're good enough to beat both Ohio State and Michigan. Darn near impossible. I would say probably 99.98% impossible. But I think they get one. I think they beat Ohio State. And I think Michigan beats Ohio State in the final week. And that means Penn State gets the nod in the East. So I think the way that works out is I think Penn State ends up in Indianapolis in December. That gives away my West.
Yeah, that's true. There you say. Now, and to your credit, real quick, for people who don't know maybe much about Hudson Card, he's only played in 14 games throughout 15 games. Sorry, I can't math very well.
That's right.
In college football.
That's why
he's thrown hosts. Right. He's thrown 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in his entire career. So,
and you know what? He doesn't have a big sample size.
No.
But you know what? His sample size is big enough to say, well, he's got the potential to be pretty darn good, and he has done it at the college level. This isn't high school stats trying to transform into college, what it's going to be in college. This is what he's done in college.
And against really top talent. I mean, you look at Alabama, even for what they were last year, still one of the top teams in the country and have been for the last 16 years.
Yep. And so I think Penn State, which is a lot of people's, if there was going to be a TCU happening, and it's really weird that you say this about like the 7th rated team in the country, but that they could be the TCU that makes it to the CFP out of nowhere. And I say out of nowhere because they have to jump Ohio State and Michigan both. That's the problem that they've got. But I think it happens.
Yeah.
Let's move to the West real quick before we sign off. Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois. I've seen those 4 as kind of the dealer's choice of, like, most of the predictions have those 4 in the top 4 in some order or fashion. Most of the time I've seen Wisconsin at the top. What do you have coming from the West?
As much as I'm a hater, I have to be realistic. I'm going to have to go with the Badgers. And I say that because you have Luke Fickell coming from Cincinnati, who that to me may be the only hiccup Wisconsin has, is him kind of getting his feet underneath him with a new team, new players, new personnel. The other inconsistencies in the West, though, is Iowa actually going to have an offense? I know you had mentioned Cade McNamara is going to be out for a week?
Potentially. He hasn't been completely ruled out. He is questionable for week 1.
But the fact that they still have Kirk Ferentz's son as the OC makes me entirely skeptical as to whether or not Iowa's even going to have an offense or not. So I discount Iowa almost immediately. Minnesota, maybe the quarterback situation I kind of watched last year. He started to get into his role kind of towards the end, but I don't expect a lot from PJ Fleck's team. Nebraska is my kind of dark horse that maybe they shock a lot more people than what we probably expect. But
I like Matt Rule a lot.
I like Matt Rule as a college coach, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to really upset a Wisconsin team that has 16 players returning back to Wisconsin, the most out of any team in the Big Ten as a whole. I don't know if that's going to be enough to overcome that. So I'm going to have to give it to Wisconsin, at least for the West.
I've got a different outcome. Obviously, we've kind of I teased it when I said I have one team returning to Indianapolis, and then I said Penn State's going in the East. So we all know that I'm crazy and I'm just being a homer, but hear me out, okay? So if you look at Purdue's schedule, okay, they have CBS has them predicted at 6-6. Okay. All right, they have them beating Fresno State, Syracuse, Illinois. I think is a win. Indiana, IU is always a win. At Northwestern, I think that's going to be a win for pretty much everybody. And they have Purdue beating Wisconsin.
Okay.
So with that taken into consideration, and me saying that I think Ohio State is a win for Purdue, that puts them at 7-5. That means they've got Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska as losses that I don't necessarily think they lose all 3 of those. I think they beat Iowa.
Yeah.
So that puts them at 8-4. Michigan, I think they lose. It's at Michigan.
Yep.
Minnesota is kind of that one where I'm not 100% sold that Minnesota has enough to finish number 3, like everybody thinks, below Iowa and Wisconsin. I just think that there's enough question marks there. Purdue wins that game. They can lose to Nebraska, and they'll be fine. They'll win the West. And I think personally, and yes, it has a little bit to do, and I'm not kidding when I say little, not a lot though. I've just heard a lot of reports saying that Ryan Walters has his stuff together. He's put together a great coaching staff that makes that has good schemes. They make good decisions. They put players in the best position to succeed. Devin Mockabee is one heck of a good running back, and to have Hudson Card as a wild card coming in, and he could be maybe not, quarterback of the year for the Big Ten, but at least really, really good to where he isn't losing games and he's actually winning some games once in a while.
Because that was going to be my question to you is, we noticed it as a theme last year with Purdue. They lost games not because of lack of talent. It wasn't for the fact that they were beat personnel to personnel. Execution and dumb plays and just, a mixture of being undisciplined because Purdue got a lot of flags last year. They gave up
27.4 or 7 points a game, 27.4 points a game last year. They only have 4 starters returning on defense. But I think that your big plus coming for Purdue this year is their head coach, who is a defensive-minded guy. He's bringing in defensive-minded players that are doing it for the most part, rather than the individual. And I think that's where execution comes from, is if you're in it for yourself, you're going to let yourself get taken out of the game and get stupid flags because you are mad and you're not thinking, what's this going to do to the team? You don't care as much. That's not taking anything away from Jeff Brom. I just think that he had a different mindset. He was more offensive. I think bringing in Graham Harrell for the offense at Purdue, I think that does a big service for Walters to not have to worry about as much what's going on the offensive side, because he's got somebody that knows how to do it. And I think that formula lends, to me anyways, enough to where Purdue can win a lower West.
Right. I can see it. And I do agree that's the one thing I feel really hurts defensive coaches more than anything, is that they don't really deal with the offensive side of the ball. They don't like to touch
and then all of a sudden they're an offensive coach once they become a head coach, and it's like, no. Play to your strength, pal.
Yeah, and that to me, because I hate to kind of reference it to the NFL, but you look at Bill Belichick with Josh McDaniels for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
You run the offense, I run the defense.
Yeah.
I'm not touching that. You don't touch my stuff, I don't touch your stuff, and he had a lot of great success from it. And I think hopefully if Walters can do that as well, which I think he will as well, I think he'll be fine, and I think he'll be pretty successful for the Boilermakers.
Well, that's my hope and my prediction. I don't know that it's as gutsy as Dalton's Nebraska last year, but it is pretty ballsy, I guess, would to say that I think Purdue's going to win the West a year after barely squeaking in as Western Division champs.
You're not going to peer pressure him into picking the Cornhuskers again, are you?
No, because that'd be a good pick in my mind this year.
You said it was a good pick last year too.
Well, come on, we all thought it. we all thought it was a decent pick. But well, that brings us to the end, Tony. Yeah. My man, we got through yet another fantastic show. Next week we've got football coming.
I know. I'm so excited.
And since you're playing me today, why don't you go ahead and let our listeners and viewers know how they can get a hold of us?
You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and the app formerly known as Twitter, aka X. I see he fixed the bird.
Yeah,
I see it.
Yeah.
I see it. It's now the official little X at B1G _talk. That is big talk, but with a 1 instead of an I. So, you can also find us on Facebook at Big Talk as well, B1G Talk. You can put the underscore or not. That is entirely up to you.
But not all Big Talk.
Exactly, not all Big Talk. They're not nearly as cool.
We are pretty much all Big Talk, but that's not our show name.
But we're better than that. Anyway, you can also start finding us soon, twice a week on ASAP. Hopefully if scheduling and everything like that goes well, since Dalton and I like to travel for work and whatnot. Hopefully start finding us twice a week on the All Sports All Plays network, and you can find us through the apps, the App Store, the Google Play Store, and Apple Store on your phones if you want to be able to catch us on the go. And you can also find us on Sam's Baby, the Lounge Media Group, as well.
Yeah, and also we will be airing on Lounge Media Group Radio once that gets fired up here, which should be in the next month or so. We'll be on there as well. And if you don't find the stream on ASAP and you want to still watch us, you can jump on Spotify and get us there, our video stream. So that is all for us today. Tony, thanks for filling in and playing my part so I could be Dalton for the day. I appreciate that very much. So
yeah, Yeah, I appreciate being on. I always love talking college football with you. I know both of us are excited for this season to start. It's getting close to fall. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of unanswered questions. What's going to happen? What's not going to happen? And I don't think people understand. There's like stories behind college. There's a storyline, and it's always, what is the next chapter for this school? What is going to happen next? And that's what we're excited about.
Yep. And so that wraps up today's episode of Big Talk. For Tony Hollinsworth, Dalton Shetler, who's traveling or has traveled. I don't know if he's done traveling yet or not. I'm Sam Sprunger, and we'll see you later.
Bye.